You know, in 2018, when I first read from the World Economic Forum that by 2025, which is now just moments away, that 42% of workplace tasks are set to be automated, it was a little hard to imagine what that would look like. So when 2 years ago, in November of 2022, we began to see AI tools that could write like us, tools that could summarize like us, taking lengthy presentation decks and turning them into one-page executive summaries, AI tools that could read like us, allowing us to upload multiple documents and extracting key themes that we needed. Or, as somebody who only speaks English, but makes many, many videos, we have AI tools that can translate for us, taking videos in only one language and turning them into videos like this. Aww.
Y cuando te muestre estas herramientas de IA en Microsoft, no lo creerás. Aquí hay un documento de Word simple que ahora vamos a convertir en una presentación de PowerPoint. Voy a pedirle a Copilot que abra el archivo y cree
Every single time we interact with one of these technologies, it often feels unimaginable. And as Jane McGonigal shares in her book, almost everything important that ever happened was unimaginable shortly before it happened. But for my niece and nephew, class of 2037 and 2040, if that's still a thing in a few years, our unimaginable is simply the world that they were born into. This work and this moment has to be so deeply personal if we are going to get it right. I don't have a lot of answers for you today, but I do have a set of questions that I hope we can interrogate together. As Thomas Pynchon reminds us in Gravity's Rainbow, if they get you asking the wrong questions, they never have to worry about the answers. If the last industrial revolution was the colonization of people's lands and resources, this industrial revolution just might be the colonization of people's minds. And perhaps one of the hardest questions for us to ask, which is going to be the first question that I put before us today, is can we make choices that prioritize the well-being of others, even if we may never feel the effects ourselves? For me, my niece and nephew are at the forefront of every decision I make, every blog post I write, every stage I come onto. And I want to give you a moment to think about who those young people are for you. It might be your nieces and nephew. It might be your children. It might be your siblings. It might be the people, the young people who walk into your schools each and every single day. So take a moment, maybe close your eyes, picture their faces, their smiles, their silliness, their questions, their curiosities. Because it's with that image in mind of those young people that I want us to have this conversation today. Now, perhaps some of the people in your mind are university students or maybe new graduates. Young people who have grown up in a world with Google. Maybe you have middle or high school students in your mind. Young people who have never known a world without social media. Or maybe you have the little ones, our elementary school learners, those who have never known a world where they could not command technology with their voice. I was in the kitchen with my nephew, and I had to set a timer. And I said, give me 2 minutes, I'm gonna go grab my phone, set a timer. He goes, I got this. And he's 5. Hey, Bixby, set a timer for 15 minutes. I'm like, who's Bixby? Bixby was the fridge. This is the world that these little ones are growing up in. Or maybe you have in your minds somebody who was born in the last 2 years. Young people who will never know a world without AI tools like ChatGPT. Which brings me to question number 2. What happens in a world where your AI tools ask you how you're doing more than the people around you? And this, for many, is sensitive. AI tools don't care. They can't understand. They can't reason. They can't think. So don't shoot the messenger. I am simply bringing to you the language these companies use as they position themselves, not just in front of our young people, but in front of all people. At this time, when we should be taking the relationships we have, not just as citizens with one another, but the relationships that we have inside our classrooms and our workspaces, at this exact same time when we see the fragility of the relationships in just about every area of society, instead of designing with young people, instead of leaning in and bringing them into the conversation, we have reduced them in many areas to cars, telling them that the complexities of today's world, to which, by the way, there are no answers, can simply be reduced to red, yellow, and green. All the while, we're celebrating the automation of the very instructional practices we know need to be eliminated so that we can achieve metrics that for the longest time have completely disconnected us from who we are and what makes us unique. Children are not cars. Their paths cannot simply be dictated by traffic lights. They are truly, as we heard from the young people on this stage, they need agency. They need environments that will support their ability to make decisions with confidence and integrity. I love this photo so much. Last month, we spent time in Central America working with 260 young people, all in one room. I was like, this is either going to be amazing or it's going to be a disaster. And the moment I stepped into the room, I was so nervous. I was like, because you hear all these things, right? Behavior, cell phones, kids don't like all these things that you hear all the time. And I walked into the room and I was immediately reminded of what it was like when I used to teach high school. Without saying a single word, the moment you step in, they read you. And they know right away, do you trust me? Do you believe in me? Are you here to support me? Are you here to help me build my agency? Or are you just here to tell me what to do? What I did with those 260 young people, quite honestly, is impossible to do with a room of adults. It was unbelievable to me. And their faces, their smiles, the mix of devices, the pen and paper tell us that when we lean in and engage with them in dialogue, they always like override whatever it is that we thought would happen. The framework that we introduce, the conversation you see them having, is a framework that we call WHYs. Because in a world where there are many questions and very few answers, your ability to have the agency to make decisions driven from your values, your beliefs, your hopes, your dreams is something we must explicitly teach. In this scenario, W is for well-being. How will using AI affect my well-being and those around me? Am I using it with integrity? When I'm engaging with this, what skills might I be gaining and what skills might I be losing? And last but not least, E. Does doing this help me engage better with the work it is I want to do? I don't have to tell this room the statistics about how young people feel about school, from being bored to not challenged to everything in between. But perhaps the one that I think is most important is that our young people are telling us we're not really feeling prepared for what comes next. We're anxious, we're confused, and we're worried about our future. And this is unfortunately a challenge I know all too well. You see, I graduated in 2007. I got my first job as a high school history teacher. And 2007 is a year that is not just significant to me, because my first year is getting a job. It's a year that's really significant for the world, as it was the same year Steve Jobs launched the iPhone. Just 1 year later, with my first job, came my first layoff notice, 2008. A year not just significant to me, but to the world as we entered the global recession. And I was so confused. I had done all the things they told me to do. And after, I was always lucky to get another job, but for the next 5 years, it was just like bouncing one place to another. And it wasn't until I read Linchpin by Seth Godin, where he said, that deal, you go to school, you get good grades, it expired. Today, if you want to be successful, you have to understand how to be a creative problem solver. You have to be able to identify gaps that exist in places around you. And it's not enough to just see the problem and complain about it. You have to take the initiative to go out and create solutions. And it's with that mindset I finally found some stability. And as David Brooks would say, I began to climb my first mountain. Your first mountain is the one that we're all told to go after. The worldly success, the titles, the USC, the Apple, we did it all. But you get to the top, and you're kind of like, okay, what's next? Is this kind of all there is? And if you are lucky enough in life, he says you begin climbing your second mountain. And your second mountain is one of purpose. It's one where you might not know what the answers is or where your journey is heading, but you have been summoned to call on something that is deeply personal to you. And it's not really every day that you can find yourselves in a room with so many people who have committed to climbing that second mountain. I'm familiar with so much of the work that many of you do, and I can hear your missions and your visions in every conversation it is that you have, in every session it is we enter. And so I want you to take a moment and to turn to the person next to you. And I'm going to give a huge shout out in this moment to Beth, Sophie, Juliana, who encouraged me to do this, because it's always really nerve-wracking to open up that sort of space in this environment. But I want to give you a moment to turn to the person next to you and to share your name, your organization, and in one sentence, what is your calling? Why are you here? Why do you do what you do? So name, organization, and why do you do what you do in one sentence. Take about 3 minutes. All right, we're going to come back. And with that calling in the back of your mind, I'm going to share mine. When I started this work, mine really was, how might we create cultures of innovation that begin with a culture of empathy? And this is the moment to have your calling front and center. But don't take my word for it. I'm going to introduce you to Mustafa Suleyman, the author of The Coming Wave, and probably somebody who has been in this space inside out more than most people we know. And just last week, this is what he had to say.
Ask yourself, are you all in? Because this really is a transition moment, right? And I really think that we've sort of got enough evidence now, the last like 5 decades of big technology transitions, all of the sort of the structure of things gets reshaped. And I think that this is a moment to found companies, scale companies. You know, it's a moment to really pivot careers, even if you're not an entrepreneur, you know, even if you're an activist or an organizer, you know, if you're an academic, this is the moment to really pay attention, because in 2050, you know, the train will have left the station and it will be quite different. And this is a moment where we really do have a chance collectively to shape and influence things. And nothing is predetermined. It really is within our reach to shape it for the very best of humanity. And I think we're very lucky to be alive at this moment. It feels incredibly empowering, and it's a great responsibility.
It is a great responsibility indeed to be alive in this moment, to have the callings that we do. And as he says, we must ask ourselves, are we all in? Because there's no doubt that not just education, but many of our systems are broken and are not serving people in the best of ways. And yes, we can go around and around on the problem, as many people do. But there is also an opportunity, as he shares in the moment, to create beauty from what is broken. It's one of my favorite Japanese sayings. We will never forget the things that we have seen. We will never forget the things that we have heard or experienced ourselves. But there is an opportunity in this moment to find a way to heal and create some beauty from what is, quite frankly, right now, incredibly broken in many different spaces. I have a book coming out next week, and one of the questions we try to answer in the book is, how do we start making being in education the best job ever again? And for many people, it is. I also want to say, make no mistake, there's a lot of people who are designing incredible new systems, incredible places of learning. We saw it here on this stage, and we saw it in many different sessions. But it cannot be the exception. This must now become the norm. And I truly believe, you know, this is a talk that I haven't given this talk before, because I can't give this talk to every audience. They're not ready. But I know each and every single one of you are ready to take places that are right now the exception and make them the norm for society. Because when you have the erosion of your public systems, it is the beginning of your erosion of society. And we see it around us every single day. From superintendents to students, for far too many, we have made being in education a miserable place to be. And it has to change. And every single time I tried to think of, okay, well, what answer should I talk about today? Like, what should be the thing? Every single time you hear an answer and you drill down, you drill down, you drill down, it always comes back to one thing: human agency. And the way in which we define human agency is, it's not just about choice. It's about knowing how the systems you engage with influence you, but also how you can engage and shape those systems as well. This is probably, you can teach anyone how to learn AI. This is not that hard. I actually find it's really, really, really hard to get people to believe in themselves, to get people to really reignite what agency means and to believe, yes, I have the power to shape the systems around me, even if I am one person. And so I hate to break it to all the AI companies and the many ones that come marketing your way. This is not simply about learning a set of AI tools that you can put in your space that are going to change your life. This is about understanding how to have the human agency to build and lead what we call an AI team. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA just last week says he envisions his workplace in a few years having 100 million AI agents. Moderna last year shared that when they just started creating their own agents, they had 750. The reason we don't just say agency and we say human agency is because we are living today in a world where agency is now shared between humans and machines. And I think this is something, again, that you can't take to every audience. But I can bring it here because you have a deep understanding of what it means to create a competency-based model. And while it's not the same, in many ways, you can think of what AI researchers and scientists are trying to build towards as competency-based learning for machines. They have an order in what they want to see proficiency in. They have an idea of where you're going to start, but where we believe you can go. And it's so important in this moment to understand this landscape because too many people designing an education right now are only familiar with number one. They're designing everything around a chatbot, which is nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But a really big difference between the work we do and the work other people do, we don't just design for ourselves. We also have to think about what is the world going to look like in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Think about that young person in your mind. That's who we design for. We don't just pick up what comes our way that other people are experimenting with and put it in front of them without giving careful consideration to, okay, wait a minute, this is what exists now, but what are the implications going to be in the future for you, and what do we need to give you in this moment so that you can meet that moment with success and with agency? There are too many very intelligent AI researchers and scientists debating what it means to be superhuman or super intelligent. But the reality when you look around you is your AI tools don't need to be superhuman to be a threat. They just need to be better than you. And today, if you're kind of like, what is an agent? What are we doing? Because, hold on one second. Let me show you that again. Right now, like I said, most people are at number one. The tools we see are hovering in between 2 and 3. They're not perfect by any means. They make a ton of mistakes, a ton of flaws. But to give you an idea of what it means to hover between 2 and 3, let me show you not something coming soon, but what exists in this moment. We have AI tools that can collaborate with you. So you're familiar with going in and asking, here's a document, put in a little prompt, and now watch how the screen splits, how it begins replying, but my favorite, how it begins commenting on its own work and applying that feedback to itself. This is now a completely new way of interacting, and I won't ask how many people in this room pay for ChatGPT. We don't recommend paying for any tool. We absolutely recommend paying for that one simply so you have exposure. I walk into way too many spaces where people are like, I had no idea this was what was there. And in that scenario, you have the blind leading not just the blind, but the most vulnerable in our society, which are our children. We also have AI tools that can act on your behalf now as well. I'll show you in this video, and I have to say it so many times, I feel like, because it's so hard to imagine, but this is not going to be a person doing what you see.
I'm Pooja, and I'm a researcher at Anthropic. I'm going to show you a simple example of computer use today. My friend's coming to San Francisco next week, and I want to take him to do some touristy stuff. I think doing a sunrise hike with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge never gets old. So I'll ask Claude to figure out some logistics for us. I'll ask Claude to find a good place to see the sunrise, to help me figure out timing logistics, and help drop a calendar invite so I remember when I have to leave. It's opening Chrome, going to Google, searching.
And this is all being done by a computer.
And it looks like it's found something. Great. So how far away is the location from my place? It's opening maps, searching for the distance between my area and the hiking location. Cool. So now it looks like Claude is searching for the sunrise time tomorrow.
And now we also have AI tools that will interact on behalf of you. And again, these are not people.
Let's review our customer feedback from last month.
Welcome everyone to our product demo.
What's one small step you could take this week towards your goal? It sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed.
Today, we're rolling out our new ticketing system.
Could you walk me through a challenging project you've managed and how you approached it?
Our AI-powered CRM could streamline your sales process.
Let's troubleshoot this together. Can you tell me what error message you're seeing?
Estamos encantados de presentar nuestra nueva línea de productos ecológicos.
These are not tools that are years away. Ethan Mollick just posted this morning his own interaction and experience with these tools and said he was so incredibly surprised at what it was like to interact with an avatar on Zoom. Is their first iteration of these tools perfect? No. But again, when you think of the young people we're working with, it will be pretty advanced by the time they are entering different spaces of work. And last but not least, this was a favorite for a lot of people, AI tools that can engage with you in your content. So this is Notebook LM, where you can go in and upload multiple sources. And people's favorite is it will take your content and turn it into a conversation, podcast style, with two hosts.
Okay, so imagine this.
So I uploaded my book.
Not dreading that though, but actually excited.
Excited about learning, right?
Yeah. What if school actually got you ready for the real world, this crazy techie world? That's what we're.
And it goes on and on for a couple of minutes. But if you're starting to wonder, okay, how are these tools able to do this? They're very open. And so if you read one of the blog posts by OpenAI, they say the reason we're starting to see an increase in these capabilities is because we train these models to spend more time thinking through problems before they respond the same way people do. We train them to refine their thinking process, to try different strategies, and to recognize and learn from their mistakes. If we weren't talking about AI today and I was doing just design thinking, I could replace this out and not change a single word. In many of these spaces, the goals are the same, but it looks different because obviously we're completely different entities. So I want you to take a moment, again, going back to that young person, and I want you to share with the person next to you what is the role of technology in their lives, and just one thing that worries you. So we could talk about this question for a long, long, long time, but I'm going to ask you to come back in just a moment. But keep that problem in the back of your mind. The challenges that we already see, because I'm going to now, so many times when we have this conversation, people like to say, everything's so new. We don't have any answers. We don't really know what we should be doing. We're just taking one step at a time. And while it is absolutely true that the technology is new, I myself started by saying I don't have a lot of answers if you have a lot of questions. There is much we can learn from history. Not exactly the same thing, but similar patterns that have unfolded that we are living and experiencing today. So I just read Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari, which there are little books all embedded within this that I hope you remember and take away with you and read. But Nexus is one that I highly recommend right now, because one of the things he reminds us in that book, and this is a topic that has dominated and is dominating our headlines across just about every single school, and that is, what do we do about cell phones? And when people talk about cell phones, they're not really talking about the actual device itself. What they are talking about is social media. And so he reminds us that AI, many people will say this as well, it's just another calculator. We got over the calculators, we'll get over this too. But AI tools are not calculators. He reminds us these are tools that are agents. They have the agency to make decisions. They have the agency to choose their own pathways. And a lot of people will often cite 2012 as the problematic year when they started to see these changes. Facebook was started in 2004. We had many other social platforms before then. So what was so significant about 2012? This is when Meta, well, Facebook, now Meta, bought Instagram at a time that company was very small. But one of the things over time that Meta was struggling with was engagement. We all know these platforms love to have us on there, right? And they gave their algorithm a goal: create more engagement. Algorithm goes out, has the agency, right? Achieve the task, choice that you want. Goes out and realizes, oh my God, polarization, and there's a few other things, really creates high engagement. And so you begin to see a shift in the type of content that comes across our screens that today has completely consumed us. So much so that majority of people have such little human agency, they believe their only solution is to ban and get rid of this. I'm not quite sure about the other 24 and 8% if they just want autonomy and they think they can manage it or whatnot. And I actually think if you look around, the number is much higher than 68%. Everywhere you go, people want to ban and get rid of this device. And I understand. I watch my niece and nephew, and I am so frightened of a world where like that infiltration starts to come in, because they have such incredible personalities, the way they engage with people in the world and their conversations. But we cannot ban our way out of emerging technologies. We're watching right now 2 huge lawsuits around AI in schools. We cannot ban and sue our way into the future. We have to be able to come together and have conversations. And right now, the gap between education and employment is getting wider and wider by the day. Till this day, everywhere you go, it's honestly the 5-paragraph essay has literally become like the biggest barrier to innovation in this space. Everywhere you go, people are talking about cheating. 66% of educators and school leaders are worried about this. And 52% of students, by the way, are worried somebody's going to accuse me. For a profession that prides itself on relationships, that is a really, really, really toxic scenario of assumptions. Meanwhile, in the workplace, 66% of leaders say they don't even want to hire you if you don't have AI skills. And again, if we look back into history, we see so many other spaces where really wealthy people have structures and supports that help them in the things they do. The quotes that we cite when we use Obama and Kennedy and everybody else were not created by them. These people have speechwriters. There are so many authors you read that you probably have no idea. I was telling somebody the other day how Gary Vee openly shares. He has a ghostwriter. I give them all my ideas, and this person goes and writes. I hate writing. He has like 7 New York Times bestsellers. There are many musicians who have songwriters. There are many entrepreneurs who have investors. And so it's so important in this moment to think about what are some of the scaffolds and supports that our young people need to be successful. And this, again, is not something that I'm bringing to you with urgency. I'm simply curating what I'm hearing from these people that I think we in education should be thinking about. At the end of September, beginning of October, as we started to see this move into more agents being created and more capabilities, both the CEO of OpenAI and the CEO of Anthropic wrote blog posts that I think are so important for us to read. Sam Altman says, with these new abilities, we can have shared prosperity to a degree that seems unimaginable today. In the future, everyone's lives can be better than anyone's life is now, and there is only one word that I care about in that entire blog post, and that is can. He doesn't say we will, he says we can. Because as Eric Brynjolfsson reminds us, there is no economic law that says just because technology progresses, everybody benefits. We can only benefit if we make choices that allow people to benefit in this moment. CEO of Anthropic saying very, very, very similar things. I think most people are underestimating just how radical the upside of AI can be, the same way most people are underestimating the risks that could be. The reason we now bring risk so much to the forefront is there is absolutely no way we can take advantage of the benefits if we do not figure out the cultures, the communities, the environments and experiences people need to have the human agency to take advantage of the opportunities. And you can see it everywhere in front of you when it comes to cell phones and social media. While a majority of people are victims of doom scrolling, there is another segment of society that have become millionaires using just this single device. I always say I would never be doing anything I was doing in the last 10 years if it was for not this phone. The same technology that can bring you tremendous opportunity is the same technology that can bring you tremendous risk. And these kinds of conversations can often leave people feeling paralyzed, overwhelmed. What do I do? Where do we go from here? And again, we don't have answers, but we do have frameworks. We do have structures and supports that can guide us through this moment. If we choose to design with people, not for people. There are far too many spaces in education where people have just ignored for the past 2 years this conversation with their learners. And even just with the adults in their communities too. And for that reason, we really believe design thinking is a method and a mindset that can help you meet this moment. And not just meet this moment, but be able to overcome the risks, to know what to advocate for so that we can enjoy the opportunities. And one of the things that design thinking does, it does many things, but I'm just going to share one thing with you today. It helps us turn business questions into human questions. Let me give you 2 examples. When they were working on the MRI machine at GE, Doug Dietz, super proud of all the work they had done and what they had created. Incredible piece of technology. Until one day he was at the hospital going to observe, and there was a child about to go in for her appointment. It was in that moment he realized that 80% of children have to be sedated before taking an MRI, because if you move, the results don't come, and then the whole process has to start all over again. He was mortified. He couldn't believe that this incredible thing that he had created was causing this kind of experience for children. So he went and he studied all these different things and landed on turning the MRI experience into an adventure. Storyline, music, the sounds, every single thing had a story that was being told during that experience. And I share that story because too often when we think we have to do this work, it's paralyzing because we think we have to start from scratch and all over again. And we don't. The beauty of empathy, the beauty of creating cultures of innovation that begin with an empathy, you have this one insight. You have this one aha moment that then allows you to be like, oh my God, if we just change this thing, we may get a different outcome. And oftentimes you do. And you don't just get a little bit of a better outcome, the outcome skyrockets. Because as Don Norman reminds us, a brilliant solution to the wrong problem is worse than no solution at all. So solve the right problem. Because when you, as Einstein says, if I had an hour, I'd spend 55 minutes on the problem and 5 minutes on the solution, you begin to see incredible outcomes. My very first experience with design thinking was when I joined Keck USC. I was a history teacher going into a med school. It was like, I did not know what I was doing. And this is where empathy really helped. We don't have to know the answers. But if we can talk with people, they will emerge. They will tell us what they need, and then we can go back and design it for them. So USC is a huge commitment to the underserved communities around them. And so when I got there, the number one way in which they want their students to empathize with the communities is by writing a 40-page research paper. A little bit of observation, you realize no one's going out into the community. Everyone's using Google to actually write the paper. We did not change the whole assignment. We did not throw the writing and research out and say it wasn't needed. What we did was tweak the prompt. Instead of telling you to go write this paper, we said if the community you're assigned had a message for healthcare providers, what would that message be? You can't Google that answer in today. I mean, you could ChatGPT and it would give you something, but as the students are going to share, what Google and ChatGPT tell you is very different than what you experience in the field. This is a video that is 12 years old.
Difference that I saw between like writing a paper versus actually going to the community was that on paper, Boyle Heights, there's a lot of crime. You can in the news, it's always about like people getting shot and just a ton of crime and gangs and things like that. But when you're actually talking to the people who live there, they talk about how they feel totally safe walking around at night. They feel it's such a tight-knit community that they just sort of they're totally fine in the neighborhood.
Designing with people and going out there is one of the most powerful experiences anyone can have. And I know that each and every single person in this room has seen examples of those powerful spaces. Joel Mehta, when writing Deeper Learning, went and saw many, many, many 21st century schools. And when he came back, he said, I got good news and bad news. Good news, there's amazing things happening in every place I go. Bad news, it's not scaling, and there's a lot of not so good things happening in a lot of places. In essence, we struggle as people to scale deeper learning, competency-based learning, all these different methods. But when you ask AI researchers and scientists, oh my God, how did you reach this new leap? How did you get to this new frontier of prosperity? They tell you 3 words: deeper learning worked. So what happens then in a world where we can advance deeper learning for machines, but we're not able to advance it for humans? I believe one way in which we can do this is by helping people build an AI mindset. We've heard of fixed and growth mindsets, right? Fixed mindset, education's never gonna change, I hate my job, just gonna get through the days. Person has no hope and no agency. A growth mindset, I think I can do something about this, I see the problem, I think I can do something, but that person has a lot of hope. They don't always have support, and sometimes they have limited agency. They just don't believe they can impact everything the way they need to. But with an AI mindset, this person doesn't know the answers, but they know that there is somebody who can help me. One of the ways in which we encourage people to begin this conversation is what we call spark your human advantage. There are way too many people that want you to go to your computer and say, you're an expert in da-da-da-da. Fine for you. But do you really want a generation of children growing up telling their computer that it's the expert? And we understand why they're doing that. But there are other ways. We believe this can be done by having people prompt the human before they go prompting the machine. Share your situation. What problems are you experiencing? Why is this something you care to solve? What results are you hoping for? And instead of asking your AI tool for an answer, give me some ideas. I'll filter, I'll decide. I'm the leader of the AI team. And these are the small tweaks we can begin to make to create these cultures of innovation that begin with empathy. Because most people, you know from all of this, the number one area most people struggle? A. Why do you care? And there's silence. The most important thing in this moment is, yes, learn the AI tools. It's important, but that will come. The most important thing in this moment is to learn more about yourself. For every one AI workshop that you go to and that somebody hosts, you should be going to 5 that are focused on building your own human agency. And we don't have this happening right now. Change is racing ahead. These companies are not slowing down. They are all in competition with one another. We have a government that is incredibly distracted with many other things. It is truly up to each and every one of us in this room to protect the most vulnerable, which are our young people. I see way too many people waiting for somebody else to tell them what to do. And I don't know what history of this country you're reading, but I honestly struggle to find a time where any of the freedoms and rights that we enjoy today were handed to you by your government. Every single freedom and right we enjoy today in this democracy that we are fighting so hard to preserve was brought to us by people like us. People who fought, people who advocated, people who prioritized what mattered. Change is inevitable, but progress, that's a choice. And it's a hard choice. There is nothing what I am sharing with you today that I think is easy. In fact, for somebody who is considered incredibly motivational and optimistic, I really struggle in this moment to find that. I really do. And that is why I tell you the one place I find it is when I look at my niece and nephew. Have those young people at your forefront, just like we heard from yesterday, and they will give us the optimism and the motivation we need to meet this moment. I complain about this all the time at home. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I gotta give this talk. I don't know if I can do this. And I complain all the time. And one time, my nephew heard me complaining about something to my sister, and here's what he said.
I can do it. I'm not gonna be able to do it properly.
You can do hard things.
I can do hard things?
Yeah, you can.
Who told you that?
My teacher.
Your teacher?
My hope today is that we all are able to come together to have the courage to do hard things. Thank you so much.